Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Mercedes have struggled ever since the 2022 regulations came into effect, and in order to correct their problems, they tried to sign Adrian Newey last month from Red Bull when his contract was up for renewal. He swiftly rejected their advances, but Red Bull's Helmut Marko believes this shows that Toto Wolff does not have confidence in his team to turn this ship around. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Big update first of all here on Honda. Rumours emerging again that they will partner with Aston Martin come 2026. Honda have confirmed their interest to become an engine supplier, but it's not going to be with Red Bull. They're going for Ford, and of course Aston Martin are very newly a competitive team that would expect to be continually competitive over the coming years. We know that Aston Martin, if they really want to compete for championships, probably need to be, have their own engine manufacturer rather than buy things from Mercedes. We know that their rear suspension they buy from Mercedes and the gearbox isn't actually optimal for the way their car is designed. So the rumour is, I know the race just made a video on this as well, that Honda x Aston Martin will happen at some point in the next couple of years. Multiple sources have indicated this will be the case, and so look, it's only 3 years until the the vastly awaited Alonso Honda reunion, which I'm sorry is very happy about, but Honda does seem to be a slightly different beast nowadays to what it was back then. And will Alonso still be around in 2026? I mean, he probably will be, let's be honest, but who really knows? Just a quick comment on this, because those of you watching the Sky broadcast for the Miami Grand Prix would have noticed that Anthony Davidson mentioned on commentary that there was a period in the race where Checo Perez was really not getting any updates from his engineer in terms of the pace he needed to be at, what Max Verstappen was doing, and people have looked into the radio communication to try and figure out whether this has been the case. Christian Horner said that there was equal information across both drivers. Checo was very clear on the pit stop, 19.8 seconds was the magic number. He was getting that every single lap to Max. There's still a long way to go, 14 points between the drivers, etc. Now, people looked into this actually and found that in fairness, Checo was probably getting equal information to Max was. There was a period of silence, but Perez could have asked if he wanted to, but a lot of the time, really it was towards the middle of that stint. When Max went into the lead after Checo pitted, that's when he was getting all the information, lap by lap pretty much, on what he was doing, what Max was doing, and kind of what he was looking for. And then there was a period here, so you can see all the radio communication basically here, and then lap 29 was also getting some information, and then lap 41. So I imagine Anthony Davidson maybe tuned in for a few laps and didn't hear much and made the statement that he said, but I think when you look at the full picture, there was equal information, it seems, between both drivers. Another Red Bull update here from Daniel Riccardo. He's going to be back in a Formula 1 car, and it's going to be the RB19 after Silverstone. So at the end of the Silverstone Grand Prix, there's a Pirelli tyre test going on for next year's tyres that hopefully are going to be a bit better than this year's tyres. We talked about that over the last few days, but he's going to drive the RB19 around Silverstone in July, and he reckons maybe after Monza as well in September. And he's made the point very clear that he wants to prove to Red Bull that he can still drive a car fast, that he's not that McLaren Daniel Ricciardo, he's the Red Bull or the Renault Daniel Ricciardo that is still there, beneath the surface somewhere. So, he definitely wants to prove that he can turn a fast lap, because if he does do well, and let's say, Perez's title challenge collapses a little bit, there is questions as to where Ricciardo could go next, and also if Nick de Vries continues to underperform, whether he might have a chance even before the end of the season in that seat in the AlphaTauri. Definitely an interesting question. Also a further update from F1's Chief Technical Officer, Pat Simmons, who says that yes, come 2026, the new regulations, they do intend to make the cars a little smaller. Now, will they be as small as they were a decade ago? Probably not, but still, they do want to make them smaller, certainly smaller, and if they can, lighter as well. We'd like the weight to come down as well, but we're a long way away from achieving that because I guess of the safety repercussions and also the engine, right? It's going to be more electrical based come 2026, so there's some debate to be had on that, but ideally the cars would be, significantly shorter and significantly lighter, which we'd love to see if the safety can be maintained, but he says absolutely they're not going to get any bigger or heavier come 26, which I guess is at least some consolation. So Red Bull have absolutely dominated so far this season, right? They've taken 224 of the potential 235 points on the table. That's only behind Mercedes in 2019, and Red Bull look very well positioned to continue this going forwards. But Adrian Newey was up for renewal. His contract was up for renewal about a month or so ago, and as a result, Mercedes and presumably others as well, given the fact that they need to improve their car drastically, reached out to Adrian Newey to say, hey, are you interested in potentially coming to join us? So this is a report that's coming out now, and apparently this was the case just just last month when Newey was re-signing his new deal with Red Bull that Mercedes tried to poach him away. Now, you can't blame Mercedes for doing this, but I will say the details here are very interesting indeed. So I guess we'll start here. Shortly before Red Bull's mastermind Adrian Newey extended his contract with Red Bull a week ago, so I guess the contract negotiations have been underway for probably about a month or so, and the deal has been signed probably a week and a bit ago now. So before that happened, he received a phone call from a former Red Bull employee who is now one of the personal assistants of Mercedes team boss and shareholder Toto Wolff. So, very interesting stuff, right? On behalf of her boss, she tried to lure him to Mercedes. Newey, however, declined with thanks and preferred to commit himself to Red Bull for another year. Red Bull chief advisor Helmut Marko, smugly as he always is, told F1 insiders about the poaching attempt by his Austrian compatriot. Mr. Wolff may not seem to have the full confidence in his own people to fix the problems with their car. Now, we'll go into that more in a second. It wasn't just Mercedes, though, trying to poach people from Red Bull. It was Ferrari as well. And you wouldn't be surprised if they also tried to get Adrian Newey, because let's be honest here, every team on the grid would love to have Adrian Newey, especially with his knowledge of ground effect cars, in their team. And maybe if they caught Newey on an interesting occasion when he thought, you know what, I've had my time at Red Bull, I was at McLaren before, I was at Williams before, maybe before my career's over, I'll have a stint at Mercedes, try and get them back to the top. It'd be interesting. Newey, I think it was I'm sure Mercedes expected the polite, him to decline politely, which he did, but I guess it was worth a go, right? Because if there's any team Newey might join, it would only really be Ferrari or Mercedes if he was to want to go elsewhere, and his contract was at an end. He could have joined. It's not like he was tied down or they tried to poach him out of a contract, so I think they might as well give it a go. But of course, now it becomes public, it now doesn't look great on Mercedes, right? I guess you can argue that. It also doesn't look great on Ferrari. So we know that Laura Mecchi is right. He's going to now join AlphaTauri next year as their new team principal, but they wanted to trade him to Red Bull in exchange for other, counterparts to come the other way. Ferrari contacted Red Bull and wanted to exchange Mecchi's in exchange for 3 high-ranking engineers from Red Bull. One of them is this Pierre character we discussed the other day. We also talked about Enrico Balbo and potentially whoever the third guy is. So they tried to do an exchange here, right? And basically send off Mecchi's who wanted to leave anyway and get 3 top Red Bull guys back in his place. And, those type of negotiations aren't really going to work. As Marko says, we all want Ferrari to be competitive, but that's not how it works. We're not in an Arab bazaar, which I thought was a hilarious comment. I mean, this guy doesn't miss. You can't lie. Like, Marko he comes up with bangers day after day. You got to give him credit. But kind of what he's getting at here is that we're not going to negotiate like we're in a, bazaar, right? There's not going to be any haggling going on. You can't give us, one of your guys for 3 of ours. Like, that's just not how this works. So anyway, that quickly fell apart. And it does look pretty bad on Ferrari, to be honest. I think it looks worse on Ferrari than it does on Mercedes because, can you really blame Mercedes for trying to go and get Adrian Newey if he actually wanted to join? You might as well give it a go, right? Because obviously it's going to help bolster your team. Now, is this true, though, from Helmut Marko? Because let's be honest, if Mercedes were winning the championship, I doubt they'd be trying to poach Adrian Newey away. So, does it indicate that Toto Wolff is not fully confident in his team to turn this around? Maybe it does. Maybe it's just kind of a question as to whether, Adrian Newey's going to help, right, isn't it? Let's be honest here, right? If you were somehow able to get him to join, he would help your efforts. Does it mean that Mercedes don't have the trust in their guys to actually deliver a car that Adrian Newey can deliver? That's a debate to be had. I'm not sure it fully means that, really. I feel like it's just, why would you not get this guy? Designed championship-winning cars for absolutely decades at this point. He was in Formula 1 designing cars before Fernando Alonso was even born. That's just how you know. And, he was kind of prolific as well during the original ground effect era. Knows a fair thing about how to build cars. And the ground effect comes back in 2022. And we know who built the best car from then onwards. Just look at this as well. These are all of Adrian Newey's championship-winning cars, from the McLarens to of course, the Williams before that, the FW14B to start, and then the Red Bulls since the RB6. So, just look at this, right? You think of the championships that drivers and teams have won, and how many of those Adrian Newey was a part of to at least some degree. It's remarkable to think about. But it definitely is interesting that obviously Hamilton made those comments going into the 22 season about, my team doesn't make mistakes. Now here we are a few months later, a year and a bit later, when, they're really hoping that Adrian Newey wanted wanted to join them and maybe give them a few ideas on how to improve their car and take it in the right direction, because without his assistance, I think it's understandable that Toto Wolff can't be 100% sure that his current technical team, and yes, he's got James Allison back in charge now there at technical director, that should give them some confidence, but fundamentally they can't actually change that much with this year's car. They can't bring a new chassis because they don't have the money to do so. So next year is really when they're going to try and put together another championship fight, but by that point, Newey's understanding of these regulations will be even further down the line, and that's where you run into problems. So definitely intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. Interesting storyline for sure, and I'm kind of surprised that Ferrari didn't give this a go as well, to be perfectly honest, because as I say, if there was any teams Newey might have potentially left Red Bull for, it's only going to be Mercedes and Ferrari realistically, but I guess he doesn't want to, and you can't blame him at all. Just before we close out the video, I wanted to quickly mention some of the numbers from this weekend's Miami Grand Prix. Definitely down compared to last year. Last year, I believe they got to 2.6 million views across the US, which is very impressive. This year, it averaged about 1.96 million, so still relatively impressive numbers, but yeah, I think Chris Midland's probably right that a novelty is wearing off to a certain degree, and also the championship becoming less competitive is never going to help viewership. So, you know, questions there about what the future of Formula 1 in America is, given the fact that they love to do as many races as possible over there. Logan Sargent has 3 home races this year, which has not happened in Formula 1 for a driver in quite some time. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.